Good morning, everyone. I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, so let me share my screen with you. I hope that now you all can see what I'm seeing and you can hear me.
We do.
So, I would like to thank the organizers for this invitation. It's a great pleasure being here with you, even if it's virtually. Since I'm the last one to present at this conference, I hope that you all still have some energy left to hear me as well. I am going to talk to you about the European Union's growth strategy for the environment and climate, with an emphasis on just transition and the case of Greece and the lessons learned. We are at the youth conference, so let me start by saying that we, the youth, are at a very large extent disappointed by previous generations. We were handed over a planet going through climate change, which quickly evolved into a climate crisis, and our share to that is very small. But the truth is that even if it sounds a bit too fatalistic, there is no planet B indeed. Our relationship with the environment needs to be restored, and this, of course, is in our hands with nature's help. The European Union has realized that for decades it was one of the world's biggest emitters, polluters, and it still is, but it has taken measures over the years, and it is reducing its emissions. However, this was not enough. Finally, the EU is owning up to its responsibility. Back in November 2019, the European Parliament approved a resolution declaring climate and environmental emergency in Europe and globally. During the same period, a similar message came from the European Investment Bank, the biggest investment bank of the world. When through its climate strategy, it announced that it would end financing for fossil fuel energy projects from the end of 2021. So besides the political statement of the European Parliament, this may be seen as a shift in the market as well. However, the biggest investment forward was the European Green Deal, which was adopted in December 2019 and can be seen as a true commitment to future generations. And why is that? The European Green Deal is the EU's growth strategy, aiming to transform the Union into a modern, resource-efficient, and and competitive economy, ensuring climate neutrality, which means no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050, and economic growth decoupled from resource use. Environmentally wise, a second pillar of the deal is the preservation of the biodiversity. Importantly, the deal includes also a pillar that aims to ensure that no person and no region is left behind. In other words, this is the just transition pillar. This is a notion that embodies the principle of leaving no one behind. It refers to the minimization of social and economic impacts of the green transition, the transition to climate neutrality. It is primarily linked to supporting the communities that are affected the most by the phase out of coal, be it lignite, brown coal, or hard coal, among the EU member states. Coal regions are the first ones that sooner or later will have to reform their whole economies and societies, because they are heavily reliant to, or if not completely dependent, on mining and burning coal. So the European Green Deal with these three pillars is a moment that we must recognize as a significant evidence of the EU's paradigm shift. Shortly after the announcement of the European Green Deal, however, there was the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Such a collective and unprecedented threat, different in nature than previous crises the EU had faced, like the Eurozone crisis or the migration crisis, could have easily derailed such an ambitious project as the European Green Deal. However, the EU planned its recovery, taking under serious consideration that for recovering better, becoming greener is a prerequisite. Indeed, it even transferred the commitment of attaining climate neutrality by 2050 into a legal obligation when it adopted its European climate law. This seems like a seal on the shift, and the realization can be seen even more if we follow the money. There are two major financial packages that I would like to mention here. The first one is the regular EU budget, the so-called multi-annual financial framework, the MFF, for the period 2021 to 2027, with a total of more than 1 trillion euros. And then the additional funds that constitute the recovery package from the COVID-19 pandemic, called Next Generation EU, with another 750 billion euros. The final agreement of the MFF includes a provision that 30% of the budget must be directed to actions that support these climate objectives. In the recovery package, the Next Generation EU, this percentage is 37%. So here we see that there is a realization of investing forward and recovering better with clear financial commitments. Moreover, the EU established the Just Transition Mechanism as a key tool to ensure that the transition towards a climate neutral economy happens in a fair way, leaving no one behind, as the European Commission itself described it. This mechanism, which includes at its core the Just Transition Fund, foresees investments in order to support the transition of those regions and communities that are primarily affected by the effort to meet these climate objectives. For the period 2021 to 2027, 17.5 billion euros have been secured for the Just Transition Fund. The total amount of investments for the whole mechanism, if additional funds are mobilized through the other two pillars, namely the national funds and the private sector, is expected to reach 100 billion euros. Now, the question is this only Brussels talks? I will mention what has happened in Greece in order to show you that this paradigm shift is in fact reaching the national level. Greece is a country that for many years was regarded an environmental and climate laggard among the EU member states. For example, it had decided to extend the lifetime of its lignite plants and tried to financially support them, while also deciding to build a new plant, despite the fact that the general trend in Europe, at least at the rhetoric level, was moving away from fossil fuels. In fact, the Public Power Corporation itself reported that for the period 2013 to 2019, its lignite department generated net losses of around 2.3 billion euros. With this background, you can understand why it was a pleasant surprise to hear that Greece would become the first lignite or brown coal EU member producing EU member state that would commit to phase out coal before 2030. Here you can see the Greek Prime Minister, Mr. Kyriakos Mitsotakis, announcing the decision to phase out lignite by 2028 in front of the United Nations General Assembly back in September 2019. This decision was later enshrined and detailed both in the Greek National Climate and Energy Plan and in the Public Power Corporation's business plan. But what are the impacts of this decision? First of all, it's a huge step for Greece's climate profile, as between 1990 and 2017, lignite accounted for 1/3 of the country's emissions. But it's a decision that will affect Greece's two lignite regions, Western Macedonia, where 90% of the lignite activity is concentrated, and Megalopolis in the Peloponnese, where the rest 10% is concentrated. For decades, these two regions have been sacrificing their environment, natural environment, their health and their well-being in order for the rest of the country to have electricity and to develop. Their economies are almost completely dependent on these activities. And the question is, what will happen to them now that this activity is set to cease to exist? In other words, what will their post-lignite future be? Fortunately, there were, and against all odds, there were some positive efforts already underway. Mayors of lignite municipalities and environmental NGOs and think tanks had united their efforts and had initiated and led the public debate on just transition in Greece. And they also managed to mobilize multiple local stakeholders. As a result, a national just transition fund was established, the first one of its kind in the EU. Then they advocated, of course, for the EU Just Transition Fund, and they also managed to include Western Macedonia in the first 3 pilot regions in what was to become the Coal Regions in Transition platform of the European Commission. Finally, they also helped establish, actually, the Forum of Just Transition Mayors, which was an international networking effort that started in Kozani, Western Macedonia in September 2018. And its declaration that was co-formulated by the mayors and NGOs is now signed by 72 mayors from 11 countries. And this is where the paradigm shift that I have been talking to you about kicks in. Because of these recent developments, such initiatives are no longer the odd man out. This means that it seems that it is gradually being understood and accepted that the decarbonization and the green transition could drive rather than hinder job creation, infrastructure investment, and industrial innovation. Today, every member state of the European Union is required to plan greener and also in a socially just way. And this has been made mandatory in order to secure access to the funds. But as I already said, this was not a smooth path. There were many difficulties and delays at the national level, and many challenges still remain. I will give you an example. Greece, despite having announced its lignite phase out, is still building, as we speak, its last lignite plant called Ptolemaida 5, in order for it to operate from 2023, when it will be finished, to 2025, only for 2 years as such a plant, and then it will be possibly converted into a fossil gas facility. Besides the obvious further environmental degradation, this will also bring further economic losses as its reconversion to something else will be necessary later on. So a better alternative would be to reconsider the initial plan and convert this plant to an energy storage facility. To sum up, transitioning in Greece and in general is a major commitment. It is affecting primarily the regions that for years have made huge sacrifices. It is also a difficult process involving delays, mistakes, and successes. And this, of course, is of interest for the whole of the CEE region. For example, North Macedonia has recently announced 2027 as the year it will phase out coal, which means that it will soon have to accelerate its planning. Also, Montenegro has committed itself to a coal phase-out date as well. So what does the Greek experience tell us? What has it taught us? A timely decision to phase out and early planning are crucial, as no time and money should be lost. Also, we need meaningful political decisions. Solutions such as the conversion of coal plants to fossil gas plants only extend mistakes of the past and actually delay the action needed for a true green transition. Finally, during the planning and implementation of the transition, no one should be left behind indeed. This means employing open, participatory, and inclusive processes, both hearing and taking into account the points of view of multiple stakeholders, especially those affected the most, and this really includes the youth. The younger generation will be the one that will have to realize all its potential under these new circumstances. So what we need to do is to make those circumstances really promising and green. I would like to thank you all for your attention, and I'm open to the discussion. Thank you.